Picture this. It's the dawn of the 1960s, and America is dead set on winning the race to the stars. The goal? Put a human into space. But before they could even think about strapping an astronaut into a rocket, there was this one huge, terrifying question that they absolutely had to answer first.
I mean, really think about it. Could a mind actually function under the crushing force of launch, in the complete and utter strangeness of zero gravity, and through the fiery chaos of re-entry? The entire future of human spaceflight, everything, was riding on the answer. And back in 1961, the job of finding that answer, well, it didn't fall to a hotshot human pilot. No, it fell squarely on the shoulders of this little guy, known to the world officially only as Subject 65. So to really get a feel for his incredible journey, we need to go back to that one specific day, a day where the pressure was just unbelievably high. Okay, so the date is January 31st, 1961. America is a nation just churning with change. On the very same day that civil rights activists are on the ground fighting to desegregate universities, a Redstone rocket is sitting on a launch pad at Cape Canaveral, getting ready to push a totally different kind of boundary.
And the pressure was just immense. You have to remember, the Soviet Union was already winning. They'd launched Sputnik, they'd sent dogs into orbit. So for the US, this flight, it wasn't just a science experiment. It was a critical move in the Cold War. They had to prove they were still in the game.
But who was the little guy at the center of all this geopolitical drama? Well, his story didn't start in some high-tech lab. It started thousands and thousands of miles away. He was born in the rainforests of what was then French Cameroons, in equatorial Africa. But when he was only about a year old, he was captured by trappers. By 1959, he'd been shipped all the way to Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico to join a group of chimps being prepped for a mission they could never, ever understand. And he was so much more than just a number. To his handler, Sergeant Edward Dittmer, he was a real personality. Dittmer even said he was like a little kid. You know, NASA was so worried about public outcry if he died, they didn't officially give him a name until after the flight was successful. But to the people who knew him, he was already Ham. So, how do you even begin to train for a mission this new, this unknown? The training itself was as groundbreaking as the mission. And what's really interesting is that the first step had nothing to do with rockets. It was all about patience. The chimps were just conditioned to sit in these custom-made couches for hours and hours, day after day, just to get them used to being confined inside that tiny capsule. Once they mastered sitting still, they were introduced to this thing. It was called the psychomotor. And this little box, this machine, was the absolute key to the entire experiment. It was built to give a clear, simple answer to that one big question. Could a primate think and react under the insane stress of a rocket launch?
The task was like a simple but very high-stakes game. A blue light flashes, Ham has 5 seconds to pull the right lever. If he gets it right, he gets a banana pellet. If he's too slow or pulls the wrong one, he gets a mild electric shock on the bottom of his feet.
The logic here was super simple, super direct. Chimps and humans are very similar, physiologically. So if Ham could successfully work this machine through the launch, the G-forces, and the weightlessness, that was the green light. That was the proof NASA needed to send a person up next.
So, on the morning of January 31st, after Ham had already been strapped into his couch for nearly 5 hours, the final countdown hit 0. But what was supposed to be a relatively smooth 16-minute flight very quickly turned into a desperate fight for survival.
Just look at this contrast. It's wild. On one side, you have this small, living, breathing creature who was actually picked just hours before launch because he was in a good mood. And on the other, you have this 9-foot-tall metal can perched on top of a powerful missile. The two were about to meet in the most violent way imaginable. Almost right away, things went wrong. The rocket burned too fast, triggering the emergency escape system. This slammed Ham with a mind-boggling 17 Gs of force. That's 17 times the normal force of Earth's gravity. Way, way more than anyone planned for.
This timeline just shows you how chaotic those 16.5 minutes really were. The rocket pushed him way higher and faster than it was supposed to. He got over 6 minutes of weightlessness instead of the planned 4.5. And when his capsule finally hit the ocean, it was 127 miles away from the nearest recovery ship.
Let's be honest, the mission hardware was a partial failure. The rocket malfunctioned, Ham hit a speed of over 5,000 miles per hour, he survived forces that could have easily killed a person, and then he was left all alone in the Atlantic for hours while his capsule slowly filled with water.
But, and this is the most incredible part of the whole story, through the crushing G-forces, the eerie weightlessness, and what must have been absolute terror, Ham kept working. He kept pulling those levers. He performed his tasks almost perfectly, only missing the timing twice. In the one way that truly mattered, the mission was a spectacular success.
When he was finally pulled from the ocean, Ham wasn't just a test subject anymore. He was a pioneer. He was the one who had answered that big, important question.
After all those hours bobbing in the Atlantic, the recovery ships finally got to his capsule. They carefully hoisted it onto the deck, and inside, they found a tired, dehydrated, but very, very much alive astrochimp. And his performance, wow. It gave NASA the priceless data they desperately needed. He proved without a shadow of a doubt that a thinking primate could not only survive, but could actively work and do complex tasks through all the brutal phases of spaceflight. Because of Ham, the path was clear. Just 10 weeks after his terrifying ride, on May 5, 1961, Alan Shepard strapped into his own Mercury capsule, Freedom 7, and became the first American human in space. He was, quite literally, following in Ham's footsteps.
Ham lived for another 22 years, a bit of a celebrity and a living symbol of this pivotal moment in history. His journey was a huge triumph for science, for sure. But it kind of leaves us with a question, doesn't it? What do we owe to these animal pioneers, the ones who bravely went first, who paved our way to the stars, but who never, ever volunteered for the mission?